We had the commercialization of agriculture, the first ever that the Indians had ever expected. The Indian economy, though they had beautiful economic factors like agriculture, like mining, 100 years back or 80 years back, if you were just owning a piece of land and you are a farmer, what is the Zamindari system? The word Zameen itself means land. India's jute goods industry, which is considered to be India having a monopoly. Good morning and welcome to the second session of Indian Economic on the eve of independence. We had started this chapter on a great note, trying to understand the economy of India during the pre-independence time. And exactly what is going to happen moving forward is that we are also going to see that what are all the sectors that had seen a little bit of economic growth during the British time period. So let's move forward and let's try to understand what are the topics that we are going to look for today. So these are the topics that we have. We have the agricultural sector, known to be the backbone of Indian economy. The Zamindari system, quite an old system, but yes, that was one of the most important causes that led to the decline in terms of ownership. We had the commercialization of agriculture, the first ever that the Indians had ever expected in terms of making agriculture and mainstream economy product. Then we're going to talk about the industrial sector, which started coming up, and yes, that turned out to be a core economic sector altogether. And last but not the least, the capital goods sector, very, very important, and that was the intensive movement for India because we started coming into the main part of the economy and we started talking about development altogether. So let's move forward and try to understand each one of this topic in detail. Starting with the first slide for the day today, this is going to be on the agricultural sector. Now, agriculture is not something that is new to us. It is something that we were born with. It is something that led to the evolution of mankind altogether. So India's economy under the British colonial rule remained something that is fundamentally agrarian, which means to say that they were fundamentally agriculturists, fundamentally people who were involved in production altogether. But 85% of the country's population, now that's a very, very important thing that I would like to say, 85% of India's population just believed and survived because of agriculture. They were just totally dependent on it. So India did not have any other sector to even think about. India did not even have the time that whether they could go for manufacturing, they could build into services sector. No, we didn't have that mentality. We didn't have the thinking format altogether. So every single Indian citizen, directly or indirectly, was involved in agriculture. So 85% of the India's large population, I'm going to tell about 40 crore of India's population at that point of time, was involved in agriculture. So that's a big number altogether for us. However, despite being the occupation of such a large population, the agriculture sector continued to experience stagnation altogether. The agriculture sector was not just improving because 85% of the population was involved. Now let's try to understand, out of the 40 crore population, if I'm going to say 85% of the people were involved in it, that's more than 32 crore people who were involved in terms of the agriculture altogether. But even though 32 crore plus people involved into one sector called as agriculture, still India was not experiencing a great output. India was not trying to become the leader of agricultural markets or products. There was a lot of stagnation. There was a lot of problem. There was a lot of scenarios or systems or places where you would start experiencing that the Indian agriculture was never making leap and bound in terms of progress. There was a lot of stagnation. The farmers were not happy. The system was not in place. People did not know how to export their products. People did not even know the value of the products. So agriculture, though there was a mainstream available, though there was an occupation that was detailed out, but we were not able to understand how to take the occupation forward, how to make an economy grow out of agriculture. Now, this was probably one of the reasons why I say that the Indian economy was something that was just lying right below the sea, like, it was just below the rock bottom kind of scenario. we were not able to emerge all of a sudden, because we did not know where the surface was. We did not know where the shores were. So that was the reason why you would start seeing that the Indian economy, though they had beautiful economic factors like agriculture, like mining, like metallurgy, and all those factors, minerals, and all the good things that are needed to promote the economy, but we were not being shown the light. We were not being guided on the right path, and that was the reason why the economy was in a downturn altogether. Moving forward, agriculture itself, if you start seeing, the productivity came in an incrementally low value, that is in absolute terms, and the sector experiences some growth because of expansion of aggregate area under cultivation. Now, to make things simple for you, if you look at the geographical map of India, a subcontinent, a vast country, today when we talk about 29 states, 6 union territories, and so many different districts and villages that are involved in this country, the land area of cultivation kept on increasing because every single person wanted to have a livelihood. So at that time, what was happening was only the expansion of land. Everywhere people were trying to expand themselves, start some cultivation. It might be rice, it might be wheat, it might be jute or cotton or sugar or any other product altogether. They just wanted to expand. They just wanted to build an agricultural empire altogether. But then, unfortunately, the output was not being counted. The output was not incrementally increasing. It was low. The output was definitely low when compared to the standards of the agriculture. Again, the reason for this is that we did not have money to expand, we did not know how to expand, and we did not have the necessary guidance to take forward agriculture as a systematic growth platform altogether. Now, the stagnation in agriculture sector was caused mainly because of the various systems of land. Now, what is a system of land? Just because if you own a piece of land in India, can you just call yourself the owner? I'm going back 70, 80 years back of our history, and I'm trying to explore by saying that 100 years back or 80 years back, if you were just owning a piece of land and you are a farmer, could you just proclaim yourself as the owner of the land, as the master of the land? The answer is a definite no. Why? Because the owner of the land was never getting the benefits of the land. The owner of the land did not even knew that what were his rights over the piece of land. The owner of the land, the agriculturist, the farmer did not knew how to take back his land, what could be done with his land. So he was completely not so educated, he was completely out of the intellectual capacity altogether. So that was one of the reasons why agriculture was still taking a backstage, because people did not know what was their value, what was the value of the output. So everywhere there were blockades. There were a lot of barriers through which the farmer has to come through in order to understand his own capacity, in order to understand his own dimensions of land. This was a very big negative scenario in the Indian agriculture altogether. Moving forward. Now, we are also going to talk about the Zamindari system, quite an interesting system that came up in the Indian economy. What is a Zamindari system? The word Zameen itself means land altogether. So, the word Zameen means land for us. Now, Zamindari, ownership of land, it's a very, very interesting concept. In this system, which was implemented right at that time in the Bengal presidency, because the Bengal was considered to be as the headquarters of the British Empire. So Calcutta was considered to be the headquarters of the British Empire, and that was called as the East India Company. So at that point of time, what they tried to do here is that they started putting in control over the land. They wanted every single piece of land under their control, under their establishment altogether. So what they did is that the profit that starts accruing from the produce, from the land, was directly taken up by the Britishers. They were not ready to give away that revenue, that profit sharing ideology to the farmers. Every single sector of agriculture that was grown was taken over by the British. So that is why they started having the zamindars. The zamindars are people who take over the farmers because the farmers have taken loan from them, because the farmers have pledged their land to them. So altogether what happens? The zamindars become the owners of the land. They take over the control, they take over the ownership. And the farmers were left poor, were left high and dry, and they were not able to get out of the system altogether. This was a very pathetic scenario in the Indian agriculture, where the zamindars were taking control. They were not giving anything in return. On the contrary, they used to collect the taxes, take that money and give it back to the Britishers. So the farmers were made to work, the zamindars were made to collect, and Britishers were meant to enjoy that money. Look at the system of India at that time. It was quite pathetic, quite saddening altogether. But then, what we need to understand here is that the word control, the control over land, the control over human beings, the control over the revenue, control over the production, that was what the British intention and ideology was altogether. British never believed that they just wanted to win over a war, win over a country. They wanted the control. They wanted to see that every single key of the economic factor was in their hands, so that they could enjoy the benefits. They could see how the growth was happening altogether. So that's why the Zamindari system is considered to be a very big challenge when it comes to the agricultural front. That's why if you see that a considerable number of Zamindars were not just from the colonial government, did nothing to improve the conditions. They were not given the roles of monitoring or improving the condition or trying to tell about development. Their job was only to collect the tax. Their job was to see that money was collected and just sent to the British altogether. They were just collection agents altogether. So the scope of development, the scope of guidance, the scope of telling the farmers what needs to be done for a better livelihood was never given. That was one of the very, very bad or a negative scenario that happened in agriculture, because of which most of the farmers had to shut down the agriculture, had to come down in that lifestyle altogether. Now, if you see here, what was the main interest of the Zamindari system? Was to only collect rent regardless to the economic condition. I use that word again, regardless to the economic condition. Why is that very, very important? Look at the condition of a farmer in India. He is poor, he is weak, he is not able to go forward and put his value for his produce. He is not that educated. He does not know how to present himself. These were all the conditions that were available, that was persistent during the time of our independence. What was the role of the Zamindar? The role of the Zamindar was to press on the neck of the farmer and collect money as far as possible. He does not want to understand the economic condition. He does not want to understand what is going to happen. He does not want to know the welfare about the family of the farmer. He does not want to know whether his son or daughter was able to study in a school or college. All he wanted is that collect money as far as possible. His job is only to collect the taxes. So what he kept on doing is that he kept on pressing the farmer to that extent that the farmers kept on becoming poor and poor. Even though you earn 100 rupees out of the labor factors out of the agricultural output, the amount of money that was collected was only enough in paying the taxes, and the farmer did not have any money in his hand for a sustainable livelihood. So that was a very, very bad and a negative scenario that you can see in the agriculture altogether. The second one, to a very great extent, the terms of revenue settlement, I use the word revenue settlement, were also responsible for Zamindars adopting such an attitude, which means I'm only concerned about revenue, I'm not concerned about growth, I'm not concerned about development, I'm not concerned about any other factor. I want the money to be settled. I don't want to know in what conditions you are surviving. I don't want to understand your sad scenarios. I only want to know that whether I'm getting money on a monthly basis, on a regular basis altogether. So the Zamindars were indirectly appointed as revenue officers who were only considering about collecting money as far as possible. So this was a very, very pathetic scenario for the Indians at that point of time. Dates of depositing were specified, were fixed, out of which the Zamindars were to lose their rights. Now this is another interesting factor. Until now, it was the Zamindar who was catching the collar of the farmer and collecting the money. The zamindar had the right to take as much money as possible based on certain system of calculation of tax and take that money, and he has to go and deposit it to the Britishers. Moment the time of deposit starts coming in, moment you have deposited the money to the hands of British, you start losing the right, which means the zamindar will start losing the right of ownership of the revenue. So the Britishers were very smart, very clever. What they did is that they allowed somebody to collect the money, they allowed somebody to work for them, but then they enjoyed all the rights out of it. Besides this, the low level of technology, lack of irrigation, negligible knowledge about farming, negligible knowledge about the pesticides, the environmental conditions, all those factors made farming come down altogether. That's a very, very important scenario that one has to understand, that one has to get into the mindset. Why? Because the exposure in terms of technology, the exposure in terms of growing a particular variety of seed, how can we go back on that? The reason is that there's nobody to guide. Britishers were not interested in educating you, the farmers, or anybody else, because they felt that once the knowledge goes out of their hand, once the information is available in the market, automatically India will start developing. Automatically India will become a country of a great stature altogether. So the farmers did not get any kind of guidance, did not get any kind of visionary thinking altogether that could improve their livelihoods. They were completely left in the dark. They did not know what to do. They did not have proper irrigation system. They did not have proper technology. They did not have a proper yielding seeds. So everywhere it was a negative scenario for them. Everywhere there was a blockade. Everywhere there was a barrier. The farmer felt that that's going to be the end of his life. And that was the scenario for the Indian agriculture, where we were not able to promote them, and they were completely into the clutches of the zamindar and the British Empire altogether. Now, moving forward, the commercialization of agriculture. How can we make agriculture a commercial success? We all know that we produce something, but is there a chance? Is there a scope where we can make the entire sector even more commercialized altogether? Yes. What we wanted is that the Indian agriculture production received a further setback because due to the partition at the time of independence. This is very, very important for all of us to understand. During the time of independence, all of us know the partition that happened between India and Pakistan. Both the countries got divided, and because of which we had to suffer a lot, because most of the fertile land got transferred to Pakistan in the Sindh Valley altogether, and the sizable portion of undivided country had the highly irrigated land, the rivers, the fertility, and all those things went to Pakistan. This had an adverse effect on the Indian agriculture. Already our country was suffering. Already our country was in a scenario where they were not able to come out, where they were facing a severe challenge, where they were facing a severe factors of demonetization altogether. But then this agricultural setback of land going to Pakistan's hand and we losing on the irrigation factors, the irrigated land, the well fertile lands, also made the conditions even more worse altogether. Now, particularly India's jute industry, which was one of the most important industry during at that point of time, went to the East Bengal, that is Bangladesh today. Look at the scenario. One side you had lost land to Pakistan on the northern parts, that's on the northwest side I would like to say, and on the eastern part you lose land to Bangladesh. So both sides an adverse effect altogether, due to which the serial impact in terms of agriculture was quite severe. India had to lose this, and India had to face a very, very severe factor altogether. This had a deep impact when it comes to the agricultural scenario. Now, India's jute goods industry, which is considered to be India having a monopoly altogether. We will learn about the terms monopoly in the coming sessions in the higher classes. But then the word monopoly, having a monopoly on a particular industry, on a particular sector, is definitive advantage. Why? Because that makes you understand, that makes you believe that you would be the first of your kind to grow a system like that. And India had an absolute advantage in terms of the jute industry. But because of the partition, because of the land going again back to the hands of Bangladesh, we had to lose that monopoly. We had to lose a lot of factors when it comes to the agriculture altogether. Now, moving forward. Industrial sector, quite a very new sector, quite a very new word to the Indian economy altogether. Why? Because as in the case of agriculture, manufacturing also was something that we did not know. At least in agriculture, you knew that there is a land, there is some farming technique altogether. But in the industrial sector, if you look into India, we were not able to develop much other than developing a sound industrial base under the economic colonial rule. Why? Because if you look there, India did not have the setup altogether. The colonial rule here, when you start understanding, was trying to depress us, was trying to compress the entire sector altogether. So industrial sector was not developing at any point of time. Even as the country's world famous handicraft industry, or probably if you start looking into textiles, you probably start looking into small scale industries, India did have an edge. India did have an idea. India did have a kind of ability, but all those industries were suppressed by the British rule. They did not get enough exposure. They did not have enough ideology altogether to take it forward. So the modern industrial growth, when you compare at that juncture, the word modern industrial base was not being really promoted to a great level, though it was just allowed by the British to be set up in India, but India was not given the limelight. India was not pushed to the front in terms of growth. So it was British who was taking the pride on behalf of India, saying that we are the people who are controlling it, we are the people who are manufacturing it. The primary motive of the colonial government was behind this policy was deindustrialization. This word is very important, because please understand that India's industrialization policy is different. British way of deindustrialization is different. British wanted India to be only a supplier hub. British wanted India to supply materials as far as possible and not become a manufacturing hub, not become an economic superpower, not become the manufacturing leader of the world. India could have become that. But unfortunately, what happened here is that slowly the British government started taking away rights from India. British government did not give license to India. British government did not allow export policies right out of the Indian government. Every single protocol, every single activity was controlled only by the British government. So at any given point of time, the industrial motive, the industrial growth was not given a push, was not given a thought. What was given importance by the British is that self-interest. They wanted to corner themselves, they wanted to grow only the British sector, and they wanted to avoid the Indian name, the Indian brand coming to worldwide. So that is very important here. That's what we need to understand and analyze on the factor that the Indian growth, the Indian economy coming up was completely stumped by the British at any given point of time. Now, moving forward. If you start here, the intention, I would like to use this word intention in economics because to reduce India, that is the factor, that's the most important thing that you need to understand, to the status of a mere exporter. So what was the intention of the British? Just to make you an exporter label. They did not want India to be a developed nation, only an exporter. So what will India do? Collect and give some raw materials. It might be iron, it might be steel, it might be zinc, it might be gold, it might be silver. Whatever export materials are coming, whatever metals are coming, we are just going to export those materials from the home ground, that is from India, and send it to the European countries. So India was just given the label tag of an exporter. They did not want India to develop really. And that raw materials were used for the upcoming modern industries in Britain. British had a very selfish idea that Britain should develop, Britain should become the modern manufacturing hub, British should rule the world, British should have every single benefit that they wanted to accumulate, but they did not want to give even a single benefit, even a single credit to India. So all the intention of Britain was to make India come down, take all the benefits out of our country and grow their industries in the world. Secondly, to turn India into a sprawling market of finished products. The intention of British was truly clever, truly very bright and very sparkling altogether. The reason was that Britishers wanted India to consume the same products that are manufactured in Britain, bring it back to India and sell it at double the rate. The raw material was provided by India, but still it was manufactured in the British industries and again exported back to India. So India was affected doubly on both sides. One side, we were paid very lowly for the raw materials. We were not given any proper kind of value at all. Our materials were considered to be of low value because they used to buy it at a very cheap price. Secondly, using that material, Britishers were able to manufacture goods and send it back to India, where India had to pay a price for it and again collect it. So look at the situation of the economy of India. India was double taxed. India was put into double jeopardy because of the British Empire. Moving forward. In the unfolding scenario, economic scenario, handicraft industry did not only create any massive unemployment, but also a new demand in the consumer market. Why? Because handicraft scenario, the handicraft market, which was considered to be one of the most important thing, but started declining because we were not able to get enough revenue. We were not able to get enough sustainability. So most of the people were not able to grow with the handicraft industry. They wanted to just leave the job. They wanted to go away from it. So that was one of the reasons why you would see that there was a decline in the handicraft industry altogether. But then what happened in the place of it was that, which was now because becoming deprived out of supply, India started looking out for new kind of employment, new kind of market altogether. The demand was profitably met by increasing imports of cheap manufactured goods made by the British. Since Indians were deprived, Indians were left lonely, Indians were left completely in a lurch. They were not able to get what they wanted. The cheap goods that were manufactured by the British were forcibly thrown back to the Indian home ground, and Indians had to buy that goods. Now that was a very saddening scenario for us. Why? Because we were the creators. We were the people who established the manufacturing of handicraft industry. We were the people who created a trademark in the handicraft industry. But because the British putting a heavy pressure on the Indian system, the farmers, the traders and the artisans could not survive. So they had to leave the job. Massive unemployment started striking India and many people left that job. Now because of that, British made an advantageous position for themselves. They started sending back their goods from their country. We had to import it at a higher price and India was again in the clutches of the British. Next. During the second half of the 19th century, now that is very important. Why? Because the 1950 onwards, that's where we are going to talk about the real economic growth. Because after that, once British completely left India, when we became a republic altogether, that was a time India understood that we need to come back. We need to make a definitive comeback where we can go back, we can look into all those industries and start developing. So that was where the roots of development actually started happening. So the real economic development for our country was made possible only when Britishers quit India and left. Though we had taken ideas from them, though the Britishers helped in many ways to establish certain systems or certain protocols, but then it was because of the Britishers we lost 90% of our wealth. Moving forward. The cotton and textile industry mainly was dominated by Indians. Now we started focusing on textile. One side, when we left the handicraft, the other side, we started pitching in terms of the textile. So Bombay and Gujarat, the state of Maharashtra, the state of Gujarat, were the prominent centers for textile industries altogether. Even now, if you see Surat, a place in Gujarat, is known for the Asia's largest textile market. It's one of the most vibrant and the biggest market that you can think about, and the jute mills in West Bengal. So on both sides, on the west as well as on the east, we started developing in terms of the textile industry. So India did not just give up saying that we are still under the clutches, but India was started making a progress where they started seeing that if one industry was not working, let's try something else, let's try something growing new, and we will start developing ourselves. So that was the reason where you will see that the cotton textile mills, the jute mills started replacing the handicraft industry, and India started making a progress altogether. Subsequently, the iron and steel industry, not to forget, India's iron and steel industry started with TISCO, the Tata Iron and Steel Company Limited, was one of the oldest companies that you can think about. It started about in the year 1905, action came into 1907. These were the companies which were really involved in terms of promoting the Indian economy altogether. So in the year 1907, TISCO coming up and making a very great venture in India, promoting India, giving employment to the Indian scenario is definitely a plus point to the Indian economic development. And a few other industries were also in the field of sugar, in the field of cement, paper, all those kind of small sectors industry which later became the large core economy factors, definitely helped India post World War II scenario to become an economic superpower. Now, moving forward, capital goods industry. What is this capital goods industry? Industries which can produce machinery tools. So I would definitely go by this word capital goods. They are the people who are going to push the manufacturing sector. They are the industry which are going to manufacture those machines that are needed. So they are the people who are going to propel the word called as consumption into economy. So the consumption word came up because of the capital goods. The establishment of few manufacturing units, not many at that point of time, were actually coming as a close substitute, where they were near wholesale manufacturers and some people who were involved in the traditional handicraft industry. Now, if you look at the capital goods section altogether, or the sector, we were trying to come up just on the line. Few industries here and there sprung up, and we were trying to support the manufacturing industry. We were trying to make them grow. We were trying to make them understand the need for manufacturing, the need for growth altogether. So though we did not make a rapid progress, though we did not try to come up something very big, but essentially if you see that capital goods had made a beginning at that point of time, at that juncture altogether. Furthermore, the growth rate of new industrial sector led to the contribution of GDP. So I'm going to use this word GDP for the first time in the Indian economy. Why? Because at that time we have still not measured it, but somehow deep at the back of our mind, we started understanding that agriculture and manufacturing being a new sector at that point of time, started contributing for the growth of the GDP. Though the GDP growth could be dated back to only 1.2% growth at that point of time, but still that contribution was also made because of the manufacturing sector, because of the capital goods sector coming into picture. So that is a very, very important event. That's a very, very important fact that we need to keep in mind, that capital goods structure coming into place and trying to get into the mainstream of economics. Now, another significant factor that we need to understand here is that there was a new industrial sector that started operating, and that had a very limited factor, what we call it as the public sector altogether. If you look into the railways, if you look into the power sector, coal sector, all these kind of things, the energy sector, these were all the public sector which was actually controlled by the government, the British system altogether, but then they were all a part of the manufacturing sector, so they were all being classified as public, which means held by the government. government, and they were trying to actually help the manufacturing factor altogether. So this is very, very important for all of us. This sector remained confined only to the railways, power generation, ports and other things. So as I've told you, these are the sectors which are being controlled only to a particular, to a limited area altogether, and they were trying to make a contribution in terms of economic growth. So if you see in India, the development started happening in a very, very small manner, and it was not something which was happening in a massive way. It was not spreading across India. It was not developing at the same rate as far as possible. It was just going in a very, very small incremental manner as far as possible. So that's why the concentration was remaining only in few sectors like railways, power, port, or if you start seeing in the energy sector, all these kind of things had a limited access, and that accessibility was actually needed to grow at that point of time. But then the Britishers did not allow us to grow, so our growth structure was very, very limited at that point of time. Now moving forward, with this we come to the conclusion for today's session. I hope and believe this session was highly interesting, informative and educative. In the next session, we will be talking about the foreign trade. We will be talking about the development factors of India. Until then, thank you and goodbye from my side. Please stay tuned, please stay blessed and enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me.